The late afternoon sun blazed across the Texas sky like molten copper, casting long shadows over the private railway platform at Brennan Ranch. The air shimmered with heat, thick and oppressive, carrying the scent of creosote and diesel fuel. Sienna Hayes gripped the steering wheel of her veterinary truck so hard her knuckles turned white, her heart hammering against her ribs as she watched the sleek black locomotive idling on the tracks ahead. She was too late. Almost too late. The train sat there like a predator waiting to strike, its polished exterior gleaming in the brutal sunlight. Steam hissed from beneath its carriages, and through her dusty windshield Sienna could see him, Cole Brennan, the ghost of Texas oil country, emerging from the main ranch house with his security detail flanking him like silent sentinels. 3 years. 3 years since she'd last seen Cole Brennan in person, though his face had haunted the business sections of newspapers and the whispered conversations in every diner from Houston to El Paso. The billionaire who had everything and lost it all in one horrific night. The man who'd shut himself away from the world, leaving his empire to run itself while he vanished into grief. But Sienna knew something no one else did. She knew the truth about that night, and she knew he was about to die. Her door flew open before she'd even fully stopped the truck, gravel spraying beneath her boots as she hit the ground running. The security guards noticed her immediately. Of course they did. A wild-eyed woman in dusty jeans and a work shirt, sprinting toward their employer like her life depended on it, because his life depended on it. "Mr. Brennan," her voice cracked as she screamed across the platform. "Don't start that train!" Cole Brennan froze mid-step, one polished boot on the first stair leading up to his private car. His body went rigid, and even from 50 yards away, Sienna could see the color drain from his face. The security guards moved immediately, forming a wall between her and their employer, hands moving to their concealed weapons. "Ma'am, this is private property," the lead guard announced, his voice professional but firm. "You need to leave immediately." Sienna skidded to a halt, her chest heaving, sweat trickling down her spine. "Please," she gasped, holding up her hands to show she wasn't a threat. "Please just listen to me. That train, you can't get on that train." Cole turned slowly, and when their eyes met, something passed between them. Recognition. He knew her. Of course he knew her. She'd been the vet who'd come to Brennan Ranch dozens of times over the years, treating everything from prize-winning quarter horses to the family's beloved golden retrievers. She'd been there the night everything fell apart. "Dr. Hayes?" His voice was rough, unused to speaking, the voice of a man who'd spent 3 years in self-imposed exile. "What are you doing here?" "Your train," she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "It's been tampered with, the same way." She stopped, her throat constricting. The same way the other one was. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the cicadas seemed to stop their incessant buzzing. Cole's face transformed from confusion to something darker, a terrible understanding that made him look years older in an instant. "How do you know about that?" he asked quietly, dangerously. Sienna pulled a crumpled manila envelope from her back pocket, her hands shaking. "Because I have proof. Real proof this time. And if you get on that train, you'll end up just like—" "Don't." The word came out like a gunshot. Cole descended the stairs in 3 quick strides, moving past his security detail with an authority that made them step aside. He stopped 6 feet from her, close enough that she could see the deep lines of grief etched around his eyes, the gray threading through his dark hair that hadn't been there 3 years ago. "Don't say their names." "I'm sorry," Sienna whispered, blinking back tears. "Mr. Brennan, I'm so sorry. I should have said something sooner. I should have—" "What proof?" He cut her off, his jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping. "What are you talking about?" She thrust the envelope toward him. 3 years ago, the night of the accident, I was here treating your daughter's horse. Remember? Starlight had colic. I was in the stable when I saw someone I didn't recognize near the train shed. A man in coveralls, but not ranch coveralls. Wrong color, wrong logo. He was carrying a toolbox and moving fast, like he didn't want to be seen. Cole's hand reached for the envelope, but he didn't take it yet. His eyes were locked on hers with an intensity that made her feel like he could see straight through to her soul. Why didn't you report this?" "I tried," she said, her voice breaking. "I told the sheriff. I told the investigators. But by the time they looked into it, there was no record of any outside contractor being on the property that night. The security footage from that section had mysteriously corrupted. My statement got buried in the official report as unsubstantiated witness testimony. The case was ruled an equipment malfunction. Tragic, but accidental. But you never believed that. It wasn't a question." "No," Sienna admitted, clutching the envelope tighter. "Because 2 weeks after the accident, that same man showed up at my clinic. He didn't know I'd seen him before. He came in with an injured dog, paid cash, gave a fake name. But I recognized his voice, his walk, a distinctive scar on his left hand. I took photos of his ID when he wasn't looking, ran the plates on his truck. His real name is Frank Reed. He's got a record. Corporate espionage, industrial sabotage. He's a ghost who does jobs for people who want plausible deniability." Cole finally took the envelope, his fingers brushing against hers. The contact sent an electric jolt through her, and from the way his eyes widened slightly, he felt it too. He pulled out the contents, printed photographs, documentation, a handwritten timeline she'd spent 3 years compiling in secret. "Why now?" he asked, flipping through the papers. "Why come forward today?" "Because Frank Reed was spotted in Austin 2 days ago," Sienna said urgently. "I have a friend in law enforcement who keeps tabs on known operatives. She sent me a tip, and yesterday I confirmed that your train has been scheduled for routine maintenance by a contractor that doesn't exist. The same shell company that did the maintenance 3 years ago, right before—" She didn't need to finish. Cole's face had gone from pale to ashen. His hands tightened on the papers so hard they crumpled at the edges. "Who hired him?" The question came out barely above a whisper, but there was violence lurking beneath it. "Who wanted my family dead?" "I don't have proof yet," Sienna admitted, glancing nervously at the train. "But I have theories, strong theories backed by financial records and property disputes. Mr. Brennan, there are people who've made billions off you stepping back from your business. People who've acquired your drilling rights, your contracts, your partnerships, all while you've been grieving." Cole turned to his head of security, a weathered man named Marcus who'd been with the Brennan family for 20 years. "Get a bomb squad out here now, and ground all aircraft. No one comes or goes from this property until I say so." Marcus pulled out his radio immediately, barking orders. Cole turned back to Sienna, and for the first time since his family died, something flickered in his eyes that looked almost like life. "You've been investigating this alone for 3 years?" he asked. "Someone had to," she replied simply. "The official investigation was a joke. Your lawyers were too afraid of liability to push, and you—" She stopped herself. "And I disappeared into a bottle and blamed God for taking them," Cole finished bitterly. "I know what I became, Dr. Hayes. I know I gave up." "You were grieving," Sienna said softly. "There's no right way to do that. There's also no excuse for letting whoever killed my wife and son walk free for 3 years, Cole said, his voice hardening. "You risked your career, maybe your life, to find the truth. While I hid." Before Sienna could respond, an explosion rocked the platform. The train's engine compartment erupted in a fireball, sending twisted metal and glass flying in all directions. Cole's security detail immediately swarmed around him, dragging both him and Sienna behind the veterinary truck as debris rained down around them. Through the chaos and the ringing in her ears, Sienna heard Cole's voice close to her ear, tight with barely contained rage. "Looks like you were right, Dr. Hayes. Someone really doesn't want me taking that trip." He pulled back to look at her, and in his eyes she saw the man he used to be, the fierce, brilliant competitor who'd built an empire from nothing. "Tell me everything you know, every detail, every suspicion, every theory, because whoever did this just made the biggest mistake of their life." "What mistake?" Sienna asked, her voice shaking from adrenaline. Cole's smile was cold and predatory, the smile of a man who'd just remembered what it felt like to have a purpose. "They gave me a reason to stop hiding." The makeshift command center in Cole Brennan's study felt like a war room. Maps of Texas oil fields covered one wall, satellite images of drilling sites pinned beside corporate organizational charts. The smell of strong coffee mixed with the lingering scent of leather and old books. Outside, emergency vehicles painted the evening sky in rotating red and blue, their sirens finally silent after 2 hours of controlled chaos. Sienna sat across from Cole at the massive oak desk that had belonged to his grandfather, the founder of Brennan Energy. Between them lay 3 years of her obsessive investigation. Photographs, bank statements, property records, and a timeline that told a story of calculated murder disguised as tragic accident. Victor Hartwell, Cole said flatly, staring at the name she'd circled in red marker on a corporate flowchart. You think Victor Hartwell orchestrated the murder of my family? Not think. No. Sienna leaned forward, pointing to a series of transactions. Look at the dates. 2 months before the accident, Hartwell Energy made offers on 3 of your contested drilling sites in West Texas. You rejected all of them. Then 1 week after the accident, while you were still... She paused, choosing her words carefully. While you were grieving, your board of directors accepted revised offers at 60 cents on the dollar. Cole's jaw tightened. I remember signing those papers. I wasn't thinking clearly. My lawyers said it was necessary to maintain company stability. Your lawyers, Sienna said carefully. Who were they? Morrison, Webb, and Associates. Why? She slid another document across the desk. Because James Webb sits on the advisory board of Hartwell Energy. He's been there for 5 years. That's a conflict of interest so obvious it should have been flagged immediately. Cole stared at the document like it was a venomous snake. When he finally looked up, his eyes were cold fire. Webb came to the funeral. He stood there at my wife's graveside and told me how sorry he was. He helped me through the legal aftermath. Cole stopped, his fists clenching. He was bleeding me dry from the inside. It gets worse, Sienna said quietly. She pulled out a series of photographs, spreading them across the desk. This is Frank Reed entering a restaurant in Dallas 6 weeks before the accident. And this is Victor Hartwell leaving the same restaurant 20 minutes later. They claimed they'd never met when questioned after I filed a complaint with the state attorney general's office. But restaurant receipts show they were both charged to the same private dining room. Marcus, who'd been standing silently by the door since the explosion, spoke up for the first time. How did you get these photos? I hired a private investigator, Sienna admitted. A retired FBI agent named Catherine Walsh. Cost me every penny of my savings, but she's good. She found connections the official investigation missed, or ignored. Cole stood abruptly, walking to the window that overlooked the ranch. In the distance, emergency crews were still processing the destroyed train. They killed Rebecca and Dylan to get my drilling rights. They murdered my family for money. The rawness in his voice made Sienna's chest ache. She'd seen Cole Brennan on magazine covers, always immaculate and composed. She'd seen him at charity galas with his beautiful wife and brilliant son, the picture of Texas royalty. But she'd never seen him like this, stripped bare, all his grief and rage exposed. There's more you need to know, she said gently. About that night. Cole turned from the window, his face a mask of carefully controlled emotion. Tell me. Sienna took a deep breath. I wasn't just at the ranch to treat Starlight. Your daughter, Dylan, he'd called me earlier that day. He was worried about the horse, yes, but he also wanted to talk about something else. He'd been studying engineering at Stanford, right? Mechanical engineering with a focus on railway systems, Cole said, his voice catching on his son's name. He was brilliant, wanted to modernize our private railway, make it more efficient. He told me he'd found something odd in the maintenance logs, Sienna continued. Discrepancies in the brake system inspections. He thought someone was cutting corners, maybe embezzling money through fake contractor invoices. He was planning to tell you about it that weekend. The silence that followed was suffocating. Cole gripped the windowsill so hard his knuckles turned white. My son discovered evidence of the sabotage. That's why they had to die that night. Not just to hurt me, to silence him. I think so, Sienna whispered. And your wife was just collateral damage. She happened to be with him when they boarded the train for that evening trip to the West Pasture. Cole's composure finally cracked. He slammed his fist against the window frame, the sound echoing through the study. Rebecca never even wanted to go that night. She had a headache. But Dylan insisted. He wanted to show her the sunset from the canyon overlook. It was their tradition every Sunday evening when he came home from school. Marcus moved closer, concern evident on his weathered face. "Boss, maybe we should take a break." "No," Cole said sharply, turning back to face them. "No more breaks. I've taken 3 years of breaks while the people who murdered my family walked free and got rich off their deaths." He looked at Sienna with an intensity that made her breath catch. "What else did Catherine Walsh find?" Sienna pulled out her phone, scrolling to a series of emails. Hartwell didn't work alone. He couldn't have. This kind of operation requires inside help. Someone at Brennan Energy had to provide access codes, security schedules, maintenance windows. "We've narrowed it down to 3 possible suspects, all people in your inner circle." "Names," Cole demanded. "Richard Sutton, your former CFO. He retired 8 months after the accident with a severance package worth $8 million. Now he consults for Hartwell Energy," Cole finished bitterly. "Of course he does." "Then there's Patricia Vance, head of your security operations. She's the one who signed off on the maintenance contractor that didn't exist. She claimed it was an administrative error, but—" "Patricia's been with us for 15 years, Marcus interrupted, defensive. "She was at my daughter's wedding. She wouldn't—" "Follow the money, Marcus," Sienna said, not unkindly. She pulled up a bank statement on her phone. 3 deposits of $50,000 each, made to an offshore account in her name, all within the 6 months following the accident. The deposits stopped after that, but she bought a vacation home in Costa Rica last year. Cash purchase, $3 million. Marcus looked like he'd been punched in the gut. "Patricia? And the 3rd suspect?" Cole asked, his voice deadly calm. Sienna hesitated. This was the one that had kept her up nights, the one that made her question whether she should have come forward at all. "David Brennan, your cousin." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. David Brennan was Cole's only living family, the man who'd been appointed interim CEO of Brennan Energy while Cole grieved, the man who'd given eulogy at Rebecca and Dylan's funeral. "No," Cole said flatly. "Not David. We grew up together. He loved Dylan like his own son." "I know this is hard," Sienna said carefully, "but look at the facts. David has been making decisions as acting CEO that directly benefit Hartwell Energy. He's approved joint ventures, shared drilling data, and—" She pulled out another document. "He sold Brennan Energy's proprietary exploration technology to a Hartwell subsidiary 3 weeks ago, technology that your son developed." Cole grabbed the document, his hand shaking as he read. "Dylan's algorithm. He spent 2 years perfecting it. He was going to present it at an industry conference the month after he couldn't finish. David sold it for $30 million, Sienna said quietly. $10 million below market value, and according to Catherine Walsh's investigation, he received a consulting fee of $5 million from Hartwell shortly after the sale was finalized." Marcus moved to Cole's side as the billionaire sank into his chair, looking decades older than his 45 years. "Boss, I'm so sorry. If I'd known—" "You couldn't have known," Cole said, his voice hollow. "I trusted them. I trusted all of them, and they used that trust to murder my family and steal my company." Sienna's phone buzzed with an incoming text. She glanced at it and felt ice water pour through her veins. "Cole, we have a problem." He looked up, and she could see him forcing himself to focus, to push through the emotional devastation and think tactically. "What?" "Catherine Walsh just sent me an alert. Frank Reed checked into a motel in Fredericksburg 2 hours ago. That's 40 miles from here. He's coming to finish the job," Marcus said grimly, already pulling out his radio. "The bomb on the train was just the first attempt." Cole stood, and suddenly he was all business, the brilliant strategist who'd built a billion-dollar empire by his 35th birthday. "Marcus, I want armed security on every entrance to this property. No one gets in or out without my personal authorization. Contact the FBI field office in San Antonio. Tell them we have evidence of corporate murder and attempted murder. And get Catherine Walsh here now. I want to hear everything she knows." "What about local law enforcement?" Marcus asked. "Sheriff Morrison is Victor Hartwell's brother-in-law," Sienna interjected. "I learned that the hard way when I tried to file my initial complaint." Cole's laugh was bitter. "Of course he is. Victor's been playing chess while I've been playing checkers." He turned to Sienna, and something in his expression made her pulse quicken. "Dr. Hayes, you should leave. Go somewhere safe. You've done more than enough." "No," she interrupted firmly. "I didn't spend 3 years investigating this just to walk away now. Besides, Frank Reed knows I'm a threat. If he's here to tie up loose ends, I'm on that list." "All the more reason for you to disappear," Cole argued. "I can protect myself. I have resources, security, money. You're a small-town veterinarian who's already risked too much." Sienna stood, meeting his gaze without flinching. "I'm also the only witness who can put Frank Reed at the scene of the original crime. I'm also the person with a direct line to an investigator who's been building a federal case against Victor Hartwell for 2 years. And I'm also—" She paused, surprised by her own emotion. "I'm also someone who watched your son grow from a sweet kid who loved horses into a brilliant young man who wanted to change the world. Dylan deserves justice. Rebecca deserves justice. And I'm not leaving until they get it." The room fell silent, except for the ticking of an old grandfather clock in the corner. Cole stared at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Surprise, respect, and something else that made her skin tingle. "You barely knew them," he said softly. "I knew them enough," Sienna replied. "And I know you. Not the broken man you've been for 3 years, but the man you were before. The man who built something from nothing, who never backed down from a fight, who protected what was his. That man is still in there, Cole, and he needs to wake up." Something shifted in Cole's eyes, a spark of the fierce determination that had made him a legend in the oil industry. "You're right. I've been hiding long enough." He looked at Marcus. "Get me everything we have on Victor Hartwell, David Brennan, Richard Sutton, and Patricia Vance. Financial records, communications, travel logs, everything. And get our best corporate lawyers on the phone. If we're going to take them down, we're going to do it legally and permanently." "What's the play?" Marcus asked. Cole's smile was predatory. "We're going to give them exactly what they want. They think I'm a broken, grieving recluse who's lost his edge. They think they can kill me and take the rest of my empire without anyone asking questions. So let's let them believe that." He turned to Sienna. "How would you feel about helping me stage my own death?" Sienna's eyes widened. "What?" "The train explosion was meant to kill me," Cole said, his mind clearly racing through possibilities. "As far as Victor knows, it should have worked. But what if we let him think it did? What if Cole Brennan died this evening in a tragic explosion on his private railway?" "That's insane," Sienna breathed. "But it might actually work." "It will work," Cole said with absolute certainty. "Because while Victor and his co-conspirators are celebrating my death and fighting over my assets, we'll be gathering evidence. And when we have everything we need, we'll come back from the dead and destroy them," Sienna finished. Their eyes met across the desk, and in that moment, something fundamental shifted between them. They weren't just investigator and victim anymore. They were partners, allies. Two people bound together by tragedy and the determination to make things right. Outside, night had fallen over Brennan Ranch, but inside the study, war had just been declared. The plan came together with surgical precision over the next 48 hours. Cole Brennan's death was announced to the world through a carefully worded press release from Marcus, citing the catastrophic explosion of his private train. Local news stations ran footage of the twisted wreckage, interviews with tearful ranch hands, and solemn commentary about the tragic end of a Texas dynasty. Sienna watched the coverage from a safe house 30 miles from the ranch, a modest hunting cabin owned by Marcus's brother, far enough off-grid to avoid detection, but close enough to stay connected. Cole sat beside her on the worn leather couch, his face illuminated by the blue glow of the television as a reporter detailed his supposed demise. "It's strange," he said quietly, watching your own funeral coverage. On screen, David Brennan stood outside Brennan Energy headquarters, his face a mask of grief as cameras surrounded him. Cole was more than my cousin. He was my brother, David said, his voice breaking convincingly. First he lost Rebecca and Dylan, and now this. It's almost like the Brennan family was cursed. He's good, Sienna murmured. I almost believe him myself. He was always good at lying, Cole said bitterly. When we were kids, he could talk his way out of anything. I thought it was charm. Turns out it was just practice for betrayal. Sienna's phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Catherine Walsh. She read it quickly, her expression darkening. Victor Hartwell just arrived at the Four Seasons in Austin. He's meeting with your board of directors tomorrow morning at 9. Let me guess, weren't, Cole said. Emergency session to discuss company leadership in the wake of my death. Exactly. And according to Catherine's source inside Hartwell Energy, Victor's already drafted a merger proposal. He's moving fast. Cole's jaw tightened. He wants to swallow Brennan Energy whole before anyone can question the timing. Classic Victor. Never let a good crisis go to waste. The cabin door opened, and Marcus entered carrying bags of takeout food and a laptop case. Despite the late hour, he looked energized, almost excited. Got something you need to see, he said, setting up the laptop on the coffee table. Catherine came through with the security footage we needed. The screen flickered to life, showing grainy black and white video from a parking garage. The timestamp read 6 weeks before the accident. A man in coveralls, Frank Reed, walked purposefully toward a dark sedan. The driver's door opened and a figure stepped out. Freeze it there, Cole ordered. Marcus paused the video. Even with the poor quality, the man's profile was unmistakable. Richard Sutton, Cole's former CFO, stood face to face with the man who would later sabotage the train that killed Rebecca and Dylan. That's not all, Marcus said, advancing the footage. Watch what happens next. A third figure emerged from the shadows, a woman in business attire, Patricia Vance. She handed Frank Reed an envelope, spoke briefly with both men, then disappeared back into the parking structure. Sienna felt sick. They were all in on it. All three of them. And probably David, too, Cole added, his voice cold. Catherine, did you find the connection we discussed? Catherine Walsh's voice came through the laptop speakers via video call. The retired FBI agent looked tired but determined, her gray hair pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail. I did. David Brennan and Victor Hartwell are co-investors in a shell company called Lone Star Acquisitions. They've been secretly buying up mineral rights around your properties for 2 years. If Hartwell gains control of Brennan Energy through this merger, those mineral rights become exponentially more valuable. How much are we talking? Sienna asked. Conservative estimate, $2 billion in extractable reserves, Catherine replied. But that's just the beginning. With Brennan Energy's technology and infrastructure combined with those mineral rights, they'd control 30% of Texas oil production. Victor would become one of the most powerful men in the energy sector. Cole stood and walked to the cabin window, staring out at the dark Texas landscape. My son died because they wanted market share. My wife died because she was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And my cousin, the man I trusted to run my company, orchestrated the whole thing. The pain in his voice cut through Sienna like a blade. She moved to stand beside him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. We're going to stop them, Cole. We have the evidence now. Evidence isn't enough, he said quietly. We need a confession. Something undeniable that even a corrupt sheriff can't ignore. Then we make them confess, Marcus suggested, joining them at the window. Set a trap they can't resist. Cole turned, and Sienna saw the strategic mind that had built an empire clicking into gear. Catherine, I need you to leak information to Victor's camp. Tell them that I kept a safety deposit box at First National Bank in Austin. Make it sound like it contains evidence about the original accident. Dylan's notes maybe, or security footage. What's actually in the box? Catherine asked. Nothing yet. But by tomorrow afternoon it'll contain bait too tempting for Victor to ignore. Cole looked at Sienna. How do you feel about playing a grieving witness with a guilty conscience? Sienna's pulse quickened. What do you have in mind? You're going to reach out to Victor Hartwell. Tell him you have information about Cole Brennan's investigation into his family's death. Information that could complicate his merger plans. Tell him you're willing to sell it for the right price. He'll never believe I'd do that, Sienna protested. I've been investigating him for 3 years. Exactly, Cole said, but he doesn't know that. As far as Victor's concerned, you're just a small-town vet who happened to be at the ranch when the explosion occurred. You're scared, probably in debt from your own investigation, and you see an opportunity to cash in on what you know. Marcus nodded slowly. It could work. Victor's arrogant enough to think he can control the situation. And if Sienna mentions the safety deposit box, claims she knows what's in it, he'll either try to buy her silence or eliminate her, Catherine finished grimly. Either way, we'll have him on tape attempting to obstruct justice or worse. No, Cole said firmly. I won't put Sienna in that kind of danger. We'll find another way. There is no other way, Sienna argued. You said it yourself. We need a confession. And I'm the only person who can make this work. Victor doesn't see me as a threat. I'm nobody to him. You're not nobody, Cole said, his voice rough with emotion. You're the woman who spent 3 years seeking justice for people you barely knew. You're the reason I'm still alive. And I won't risk losing. He stopped abruptly, seeming to realize what he was about to say. The air between them crackled with unspoken tension. Sienna's heart hammered as she held his gaze, seeing past the grief and rage to something deeper, something that had been building since the moment she'd screamed for him to stop that train. Marcus cleared his throat diplomatically. I'll give you 2 minutes. Catherine, let's discuss technical details. He closed the laptop and headed for the cabin's small bedroom, leaving them alone. Cole, Sienna said softly, I know you're trying to protect me, but this isn't just about your family anymore. Frank Reed has killed before. He'll kill again. Victor Hartwell thinks he's untouchable. If we don't stop them now with everything we have, they'll disappear into their money and their power, and justice will never come. I can't lose anyone else, Cole admitted, the words seeming to be torn from somewhere deep inside him. For 3 years, I've been dead inside, going through motions, signing papers, existing but not living. And then you showed up screaming at me to stop that train, and for the first time since they died, I felt something. I felt alive. Sienna's breath caught. Cole, I know the timing is terrible, and he continued, moving closer. I know I'm a mess. I know I have no right to feel anything except grief and rage, but standing here with you, planning to take down the people who destroyed my family, I feel like maybe there's a reason I survived. Maybe it wasn't just dumb luck that you arrived when you did. It wasn't luck, Sienna whispered. I've been watching your schedule for weeks, waiting for the right moment. Catherine flagged the maintenance order on your train, and I knew they were going to try again. You saved my life. You're giving me a chance to finish what I started 3 years ago, she countered. That makes us even. Cole reached up and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his calloused fingers lingering against her cheek. Nothing about this is even, Sienna Hayes. You've given me back my purpose. You've given me back my fight, and I'm terrified that if I let you walk into Victor's trap, I'll lose that. Lose you. Before I even have a chance to figure out what this is between us. Sienna's heart felt like it might burst out of her chest. She'd spent 3 years focused on justice, on truth, on making things right. She hadn't allowed herself to think about the brilliant, broken man at the center of her investigation as anything other than a victim to be avenged. But now, standing in this rustic cabin with Cole Brennan looking at her like she was his salvation, she couldn't deny the connection anymore. Then we make sure I don't get caught, she said, placing her hand over his where it still rested against her cheek. We plan every detail, cover every angle. Catherine will have surveillance on me the entire time. Marcus will have a team ready to move the second things go sideways. And you?" She smiled slightly. "You'll be the ghost in the machine watching everything, ready to come back from the dead if necessary." Cole leaned his forehead against hers and Sienna closed her eyes, breathing in the scent of him, leather and coffee and something uniquely Cole. "Promise me you'll be careful." "I promise," she whispered. "Promise me you won't do anything stupid if things get dangerous." Define stupid. Charging in like a hero and getting yourself actually killed this time. Cole pulled back just enough to look into her eyes, and despite everything, the danger, the grief, the impossible situation, he smiled. Really smiled for the first time in 3 years. "Can't promise that. But I can promise I'll do everything in my power to make sure we both survive this. Because when it's over, when Victor and everyone who helped him are behind bars, I want..." He hesitated. "I want a chance to take you to dinner. Somewhere nice. Somewhere that isn't a safe house or a crime scene." Sienna felt tears prick her eyes, but she was smiling too. "That's a pretty good motivation to stay alive. The best I've had in a long time." They stood there for a moment longer, foreheads touching, hands intertwined, drawing strength from each other. Outside, an owl hooted in the darkness. Inside, 2 broken people found something unexpected in the midst of their quest for justice. Hope. Marcus's voice broke the moment. "Sorry to interrupt, but Catherine has Victor's schedule locked down. If we're going to do this, we need to move tomorrow. The board meeting is at 9, which means Victor will be in Austin all day." Cole squeezed Sienna's hand once more before releasing it and turning back to business. "All right, let's build a trap that a snake can't resist." For the next 3 hours, they planned every detail. Sienna would call Victor's office first thing in the morning, claiming to have information about Cole Brennan's private investigation. She'd mention the safety deposit box, hinted evidence that could derail the merger, and name her price, $500,000. Enough to sound desperate, but not so much that it seemed like a setup. Catherine would plant corroborating information through her sources, making it seem legitimate. Marcus would position his team around the meet location, a public parking garage in Austin where Sienna could claim safety in numbers. And Cole would monitor everything from a mobile command center, ready to call in federal authorities the moment they had enough evidence. As dawn broke over the Texas Hill Country, Sienna stood on the cabin's porch with her phone in hand, rehearsing her lines one more time. Cole came up behind her, placing his hands gently on her shoulders. "Last chance to back out," he said quietly. Sienna looked at the sunrise painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the same colors that had illuminated the evening Dylan and Rebecca Brennan died. "No backing out. We finish this. Today." Cole turned her to face him, his eyes searching hers. "When this is over." "When this is over," she interrupted gently, "you're taking me to the nicest restaurant in Texas. And we're going to toast to justice and second chances and the beginning of something I'm pretty sure neither of us saw coming." He kissed her then, soft and careful and full of promise. When they pulled apart, Sienna saw the man Cole Brennan used to be fully restored, strong, determined, and ready to fight. "Let's go catch some killers," she said. Cole's smile was fierce and bright. "Let's go." The parking garage in downtown Austin felt like a concrete tomb. Sienna's footsteps echoed off the stained walls as she made her way to level 3, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. The wire taped to her ribcage felt obvious despite Catherine's assurances that it was undetectable, and the tiny camera hidden in her jacket button seemed to burn against her chest. "I've got visual," Catherine's voice whispered through the nearly invisible earpiece. Victor just pulled in. Black Mercedes, Texas plates. 2 men with him. One's definitely Frank Reed. Sienna's blood turned to ice. She'd expected Victor might bring muscle, but seeing Frank Reed, the man who'd murdered Rebecca and Dylan Brennan, made everything horrifyingly real. She touched the small canister of pepper spray in her pocket, knowing it would be useless against a professional killer. "Sienna, you don't have to do this." Cole's voice came through, tight with worry. "We can abort right now. Just walk away." "No," she whispered, positioning herself by the concrete pillar where they'd agreed to meet. "We're too close." I can do this. Marcus has 6 men positioned around the garage, Cole continued as if reassuring himself. FBI is standing by 2 blocks away. At the first sign of trouble, I know the plan, Sienna interrupted gently. Trust me, Cole, like I trusted you. A brief silence, then. I do trust you. Just come back to me in one piece. The words sent warmth through her despite the fear. Come back to me, as if she already belonged somewhere, to someone, after 3 years of solitary investigation and lonely nights wondering if justice would ever come. The Mercedes pulled into a spot 50 feet away. Victor Hartwell emerged first, and Sienna was struck by how ordinary he looked. Mid-50s, well-dressed in an expensive suit, salt and pepper hair perfectly styled. He could have been any successful businessman heading to any meeting. Only the coldness in his eyes betrayed the monster beneath. Frank Reed got out from the passenger side, and Sienna's stomach clenched. He was exactly as she remembered. Average height, unremarkable features, the kind of man who could disappear in a crowd. Except for his eyes, dead eyes that had seen too much violence and felt nothing. The third man stayed in the driver's seat, engine running. Smart. Always have an exit strategy. Dr. Hayes, Victor called out, his voice smooth and friendly as he approached. Thank you for reaching out. Terrible business about Cole Brennan. You have my deepest condolences. Sienna forced herself to stand straight, to project desperate greed rather than terrified determination. Save it, Mr. Hartwell. We both know why I'm here. Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. Indeed. You mentioned having information about Cole's private investigation. Information that might concern my business interests. Cole was obsessed with his family's deaths, Sienna said, sticking to the script they'd rehearsed. He didn't believe it was an accident. Spent the last few months of his life gathering evidence, talking to witnesses, building a case. How unfortunate, Victor said mildly. And you know this because? Because I was helping him, Sienna lied smoothly. I'm a veterinarian, Mr. Hartwell. I make $60,000 a year. When Cole offered me $50,000 cash to quietly investigate maintenance records and interview ranch staff, I took it. And when he died, I realized I was sitting on information worth a lot more than $50,000. Victor studied her, his expression unreadable. Frank Reed had moved to flank her close enough that she could feel his presence like a physical threat. What kind of information? The kind that proves his family's death wasn't an accident, Sienna said, letting her voice shake slightly. The kind that names names, shows financial transactions, connects dots that the official investigation missed. I'm listening, Victor said carefully. Cole kept everything in a safety deposit box at First National Bank. Documentation, witness statements, even security footage from the night of the accident. He was paranoid about keeping it safe. Sienna pulled out a key from her pocket, a prop Catherine had secured from a similar bank. This opens that box, and for $500,000 it's yours. Victor laughed, the sound echoing off the concrete walls. You expect me to pay $500,000 for information that may or may not exist? For all I know, that box is empty. Then don't buy it, Sienna said, turning to leave. I'm sure the FBI will be very interested in what's inside. Cole had contacts at the Bureau. I'm sure they'd love to. Wait. Victor's voice hardened. Let's not be hasty. Frank, what do you think? Frank Reed spoke for the first time, his voice flat and emotionless. I think Dr. Hayes is playing a dangerous game. I think she knows more than she's saying. And I think we should find out exactly what she knows before we make any deals. Sienna's hand moved toward the pepper spray, but Reed was faster. He grabbed her wrist, twisting it behind her back with professional efficiency. Pain shot up her arm as he pressed her against the concrete pillar. Marcus, move in now. Cole's voice exploded through her earpiece. Found the wire, Reed said, ripping open Sienna's jacket and tearing the device from her chest. He crushed it under his boot, then found the earpiece and did the same. She's working with someone, police? FBI? Victor's expression transformed from false friendliness to cold fury. You stupid girl, did you really think you could trap me? Do you have any idea what you've done? I know exactly what I've done, Sienna gasped, struggling against Reed's grip. I've gotten you on tape admitting you're worried about evidence of murder. I've gotten you on camera with the man who sabotaged Cole Brennan's train. And in about 30 seconds, you're going to be surrounded by federal agents." Victor's laugh was genuinely amused this time. "No, we're not, because Sheriff Morrison has his men stationed at every entrance to this garage. Because Judge Atkins signed a warrant for your arrest this morning, something about trespassing and harassment. And because by the time anyone realizes you're missing, you'll be fertilizer in the West Texas desert." Ice water poured through Sienna's veins. They'd anticipated Victor's arrogance, his need to gloat. They hadn't anticipated he'd have law enforcement on his payroll positioned to intercept their backup. "Frank, put her in the trunk," Victor ordered. "We'll deal with her at the ranch and find out who she's working with. If there are more loose ends, I want them tied up permanently." Reed dragged Sienna toward the Mercedes, and she fought with everything she had, kicking and screaming. Her voice echoed off the concrete walls. Surely someone would hear. A gunshot cracked through the garage, and Reed's grip vanished. Sienna stumbled forward, gasping, and turned to see the killer collapse with a red stain spreading across his shoulder. Marcus and 3 of his men emerged from behind vehicles, weapons drawn. "Federal agents!" Marcus shouted. "Victor Hartwell, Frank Reed, you're under arrest." But Victor was already moving, sprinting toward his Mercedes. The driver gunned the engine, and the car screeched toward the exit ramp. Marcus's team opened fire, but the vehicle's reinforced panels deflected the shots. "He's getting away!" Sienna screamed. Another vehicle roared into the garage from the opposite direction, a black Suburban with tinted windows. It slammed into the side of Victor's Mercedes, the impact sending both vehicles spinning. The Suburban's door flew open and Cole Brennan stepped out, very much alive, very much furious. Victor stumbled from the wrecked Mercedes, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. He stared at Cole like he was seeing a ghost. "You're dead." The explosion was very carefully staged, Cole said, advancing on him. "Did you really think I'd make it that easy for you, Victor, after what you did to my family?" Behind them, FBI agents poured into the garage, led by a woman in a dark suit who immediately began barking orders. Frank Reed was being cuffed despite his injury, Marcus's bullet having hit exactly where it was meant to, disabling but not lethal. Victor's face cycled through shock, rage, and finally calculation. "You have nothing on me, Cole. So I'm at the scene of an accident. That proves nothing. Frank Reed is his own man. His actions aren't my responsibility. And if you think this little performance will hold up in court—" "We don't need this performance to hold up in court," Catherine Walsh said, emerging from one of the parked cars. She held a laptop, its screen showing crystal-clear video. "We have 6 months of surveillance, Victor. 6 months of you meeting with Frank Reed, discussing problems that needed to be solved, planning the train sabotage, coordinating with Richard Sutton and Patricia Vance. We have bank records showing payments to all of them. We have the shell company you and David Brennan created to buy up mineral rights." Victor's face went pale. "David? David has nothing to do with—" "David's being arrested right now," Cole interrupted, his voice like granite. "At the Brennan Energy Board meeting, in front of everyone, along with Sutton and Vance. It's over, Victor. You lost." For a long moment, Victor just stood there, blood dripping down his face, his empire crumbling around him. Then he lunged at Cole with a roar of pure rage. Cole didn't move, didn't flinch, just stood there as FBI agents tackled Victor to the concrete, driving him down hard. They cuffed him roughly, reading him his rights in voices that echoed through the garage. Sienna watched it all unfold, her legs suddenly shaky. Cole was at her side in an instant, his hands gentle on her shoulders, his eyes searching her face. "Are you hurt? Did he hurt you?" "I'm okay," she managed, though her voice shook. "Cole, you weren't supposed to. The plan was for you to stay hidden until—" "The plan changed the second he put his hands on you," Cole said fiercely. "I wasn't going to sit in a van watching monitors while you were in danger. I couldn't. Despite everything, the adrenaline, the fear, the chaos around them." Sienna laughed. "You promised not to do anything stupid." "I promised to do everything in my power to make sure we both survived," Cole corrected. This seemed like the best way to accomplish that. The FBI agent in charge approached them, her expression all business. "Mr. Brennan, Dr. Hayes, I'm Special Agent Jennifer Morrison. We're going to need detailed statements from both of you. But first," she looked at Cole with something approaching respect. That was one hell of a sting operation. Most civilians would have botched it completely. "I'm highly motivated," Cole said simply, his arm sliding protectively around Sienna's waist. Agent Morrison nodded. "Catherine Walsh speaks very highly of both of you. We've been building a case against Hartwell Energy for 2 years, but we couldn't make the connections stick. Your evidence filled in every gap." She glanced at where Victor was being loaded into a federal vehicle, still screaming about lawyers and false arrest. "He's going away for a long time. Multiple counts of murder, conspiracy to commit murder, corporate espionage, bribery of public officials. We've got him cold." "What about David?" Sienna asked quietly. "Singing like a canary," Catherine said, joining them. "The second agent showed up at the board meeting. He tried to cut a deal. He's already given up Richard Sutton, Patricia Vance, and 3 other conspirators we didn't even know about." Cole's expression was unreadable. "My own cousin, my own blood. He helped kill my wife and son for money. He claims he didn't know about the murders," Agent Morrison said. "Says Victor told him it would just be corporate pressure, strategic maneuvering. He says he never authorized violence." "That's a lie," Cole said flatly. "David knew. He had to know. But I suppose that's for a jury to decide now." Marcus approached, his professional demeanor finally cracking into a relieved smile. "Boss, we got them all. Every single one. It's over." "It's over," Cole repeated, as if testing the words. He looked down at Sienna, and she saw tears threatening in his eyes for the first time. "They're going to pay for what they did. Rebecca and Dylan are going to get justice." Sienna reached up and cupped his face in her hands. "You did it, Cole. You came back from the dead and you destroyed them. Your family would be so proud." "We did it," he corrected, his voice rough with emotion. "I wouldn't have survived without you, literally and figuratively." Around them, the garage had transformed into a crime scene. Federal agents photographed evidence, EMTs treated Frank Reed's gunshot wound under armed guard, and forensic teams processed both wrecked vehicles. But in their small bubble, Cole and Sienna stood together, 2 people who'd found each other in the darkest circumstances imaginable. "Sir?" A young agent approached hesitantly. "We found something in Hartwell's car. A laptop with encrypted files. Our tech guys think it might contain evidence of other crimes." Cole nodded, but his attention remained on Sienna. "Agent Morrison can handle it. I'm done being the vigilante CEO. I'm done living for revenge." "What will you do now?" Sienna asked softly. Cole smiled, and it was genuine, full of possibility and hope and something that looked suspiciously like joy. "I'm going to rebuild my company the right way. I'm going to establish a foundation in Rebecca and Dylan's names. I'm going to live again, instead of just surviving." He paused, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "And I'm going to take a beautiful, brilliant, courageous woman to the nicest restaurant in Texas. If she'll still have me." "I'll have you," Sienna whispered, not caring that half the FBI was probably watching. "I definitely will." They kissed there in the parking garage, surrounded by federal agents and evidence of conspiracy and murder, and somehow it felt perfect. Like coming home after a long, terrible journey. Like finding light after years of darkness. When they finally pulled apart, Catherine was grinning at them. "You two are disgustingly cute for people who just took down a criminal empire." "We earned it," Cole said, not taking his eyes off Sienna. "That you did," Catherine agreed. "That you most certainly did." 6 months later, Brennan Ranch looked like it had come back to life. The main house, which had sat dark and empty for 3 years, now glowed with warm light every evening. The stables housed 30 horses again, their gentle whinnies carrying across the evening air. And the private railway, the site of so much tragedy, had been converted into a memorial garden, where wildflowers bloomed between carefully preserved sections of track. Sienna stood in that garden now, her hand intertwined with Cole's as they watched the sun set over the Texas hill country. The memorial plaques for Rebecca and Dylan Brennan gleamed in the golden light, surrounded by white roses that Sienna had planted herself. "They would have liked this," Cole said quietly, his voice steady in a way it hadn't been for years. "Rebecca always wanted a garden here. Said the railway was too industrial, needed softening. Dylan would have appreciated the engineering," Sienna added, gesturing to the carefully preserved brake mechanisms now displayed under glass. "The Foundation's scholarship program has his name on every award. 15 students this year studying railway safety engineering." Cole squeezed her hand. 16. We just approved another application this morning. A girl from Houston whose father died in a freight train accident. She wants to make railways safer for everyone." "Rebecca and Dylan's legacy," Sienna murmured. "Lives saved, futures built. That's better than any revenge could ever be." The trial had been a media sensation. Victor Hartwell, David Brennan, Richard Sutton, Patricia Vance, and Frank Reed all faced federal charges. Victor's legal team tried every trick imaginable, but Catherine Walsh's evidence was ironclad. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Victor Hartwell, life in prison without parole for 2 counts of murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and corporate espionage. Frank Reed, life in prison without parole for 2 counts of murder, attempted murder, and being a career criminal. David Brennan, 25 years for conspiracy, accessory to murder, and corporate fraud. His cooperation earned him a reduced sentence, though it would never erase his betrayal. Richard Sutton and Patricia Vance, 15 years each for conspiracy and corruption. Sheriff Morrison and Judge Atkins faced their own trials for obstruction of justice. The corrupt network Victor had built over decades crumbled completely, taking down politicians, lawyers, and businessmen across Texas. "Do you ever regret it?" Sienna asked, watching as fireflies began to emerge in the twilight. "Coming back from the dead? You could have stayed hidden, stayed safe." Cole turned to face her, his hands framing her face with infinite gentleness. "Not for a single second. Yes, I lost my cousin and discovered how deep the betrayal went. But I also found you. I found purpose again. I found a reason to rebuild instead of just mourning." "We rebuilt together," Sienna corrected, leaning into his touch. Her veterinary practice had expanded. She now worked part-time at the ranch, overseeing animal welfare programs funded by the Brennan Foundation. The rest of her time went to advocacy work, helping families of industrial accident victims navigate investigations and legal systems. "Together," Cole agreed. "Always together now." He reached into his pocket, and Sienna's heart stuttered as he pulled out a small velvet box. The sunset painted everything in shades of gold and amber as he dropped to one knee right there in the memorial garden, surrounded by wildflowers and the ghosts of his past. "Sienna Hayes," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved my life in every way a person can be saved. You gave me back my fight, my purpose, my ability to feel something other than grief. You showed me that even after the worst tragedy, there can be second chances. There can be love again." He opened the box, revealing a stunning ring, a diamond surrounded by Texas bluebonnets and sapphire. "Will you marry me? Will you build a future with me here? In this place we've transformed from tragedy to hope?" Tears streamed down Sienna's face as she dropped to her knees in front of him, not caring about her dress or the dirt or anything except the man before her. "Yes. God, yes, Cole. 1,000 times yes." He slid the ring onto her finger and they kissed as the last rays of sunlight faded, as the first stars appeared, as the world around them seemed to hold its breath in celebration. When they finally pulled apart, both laughing and crying, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "I never thought I'd feel this way again. Happy, hopeful, excited about tomorrow instead of dreading it." "Neither did I," Sienna admitted. "I spent 3 years chasing justice thinking that would be enough. But this, us, This is more than I ever imagined. They walked back to the main house hand in hand, where Marcus waited on the porch with champagne and a knowing smile. "About damn time, boss," he said, pulling them both into a rare hug. "Congratulations." "You knew?" Sienna laughed. "I helped pick the ring," Marcus admitted. "Cole wanted something that represented Texas, represented resilience, represented you. The bluebonnets were my suggestion." "They're perfect," Sienna said, admiring how the ring caught the porch light. "Everything is perfect." Inside, they found Catherine Walsh waiting with Agent Morrison, both women grinning. "We may have been tipped off about tonight," Catherine said, raising her own glass of champagne. "To justice, second chances, and love that survives even the darkest times." They toasted together, this unlikely family forged in tragedy and tempered by determination. As night fell over Brennan Ranch, Sienna looked around at the faces of people who'd become her family: Cole, Marcus, Catherine, even Agent Morrison, who'd become a friend through the long trial process. "What are you thinking?" Cole asked, his arm around her waist. "I'm thinking that Rebecca and Dylan would be happy," Sienna said softly. "They'd be happy you found love again. They'd be happy their deaths weren't in vain. They'd be happy the ranch is alive again." Cole's eyes glistened with tears, but they were different tears than the ones he'd cried for 3 years. These were tears of healing, of acceptance, of moving forward while never forgetting. "They would," he agreed. "And I hope, they'd give us their blessing." As if in answer, a warm breeze swept through the porch, carrying the scent of wildflowers from the memorial garden. Sienna smiled, squeezed Cole's hand, and knew with absolute certainty that they were exactly where they were meant to be. 1 year later, the Brennan Foundation Gala transformed the Houston Convention Center into a celebration of hope and resilience. Crystal chandeliers cast soft light over tables filled with the most influential people in Texas, not just oil barons and politicians, but also the families of accident victims, students receiving scholarships, and advocates for corporate accountability. Sienna stood backstage in an elegant navy gown, her engagement ring catching the light as she adjusted Cole's bow tie. In 2 weeks, they'd be married in the memorial garden at the ranch, surrounded by wildflowers and the people who'd helped them survive their darkest days. "Nervous?" she asked, smoothing his lapels. "Terrified," Cole admitted with a slight smile. "Public speaking was never my favorite, even before everything happened. But this matters. They need to hear it." "They do," Sienna agreed. "And you're ready." Through the curtain, she could hear Marcus introducing Cole, not as the reclusive billionaire who'd vanished into grief, but as a man who'd transformed tragedy into purpose. The applause was thunderous as Cole walked onto the stage, and Sienna watched from the wings with pride swelling in her chest. 3 years ago, Cole began, his voice steady and strong. "I lost everything that mattered to me. My wife Rebecca and my son Dylan died in what was ruled an accident, and I let that tragedy consume me. I disappeared from the world, from my company, from life itself. I was a ghost haunting my own existence." The ballroom had gone silent, hundreds of people hanging on every word. "But then a remarkable woman literally screamed at me to stop a train," Cole continued, his eyes finding Sienna in the wings. "Dr. Sienna Hayes had spent 3 years investigating my family's deaths when everyone else had moved on. She risked her career, her safety, and ultimately her life to find the truth. And that truth, that my family was murdered for corporate greed, nearly destroyed me all over again." He paused, gathering himself. "What saved me wasn't revenge, though justice was important. What saved me was purpose. The Brennan Foundation exists because Rebecca and Dylan's deaths cannot be meaningless. Every scholarship we award, every safety regulation we help implement, every family we support through tragedy, that's their legacy. That's how love survives even death." The audience was rapt, many wiping tears from their eyes. "Tonight, I'm honored to announce that the Foundation has partnered with federal regulators to establish the Dylan Brennan Railway Safety Initiative," Every private and commercial railway in America will be subject to new inspection standards. Every maintenance contractor will be vetted and verified. And every family who loses someone to corporate negligence will have advocates and resources to seek justice. The applause was deafening. Cole waited for it to subside before continuing. I also want to recognize the incredible work of the Rebecca Brennan Victim Advocacy Program. In just 1 year, we've helped 73 families navigate investigations into workplace accidents, medical malpractice, and corporate malfeasance. We've recovered over $30 million in settlements and compensation. And most importantly, we've given voices to people who were silenced by money and power. He gestured to the audience. Many of those families are here tonight. Their courage, their refusal to accept injustice, they inspire me every single day. Sienna felt tears streaming down her face as Cole spoke. This was the man she'd fallen in love with. Not the broken recluse, not even the fierce avenger, but this version who'd taken his pain and transformed it into something beautiful. Finally, Cole said, his voice softening, I want to thank the woman who gave me back my life. Dr. Sienna Hayes, would you join me? Sienna's heart leaped as Marcus gently pushed her toward the stage. She walked out to thunderous applause, and Cole met her halfway, taking her hand. This woman is my hero, he said simply. In 2 weeks, she'll be my wife. And every day for the rest of my life, I'll work to deserve the second chance she gave me. He turned to address the audience directly. If you take nothing else from tonight, remember this. Tragedy doesn't have to be the end of your story. Grief doesn't have to consume you forever. And justice, real justice, is worth fighting for, no matter how long it takes or how powerful your enemies are. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Sienna stood beside Cole, their hands clasped tightly as cameras flashed and people cheered. When they finally left the stage, Catherine and Marcus were waiting with champagne and enormous grins. You two are going to change the world, Catherine said, pulling them both into a hug. You already have. We're just getting started, Cole replied, his arm around Sienna's waist. Later that night, after the gala ended and the crowds dispersed, Cole and Sienna stood on the convention center balcony overlooking Houston's glittering skyline. The city stretched out before them, millions of lights representing millions of lives, some touched by tragedy, some by joy, all interconnected in ways they'd never fully understand. Do you think they know? Sienna asked softly. Rebecca and Dylan? Do you think they can see what you've built in their names? Cole was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. I'd like to think so. I'd like to think they're proud. He turned to face her, cupping her face in his hands. I know I'm grateful. For you, for this second chance, for learning that love doesn't end with death. It transforms. It grows. It finds new ways to exist. I love you, Sienna whispered. Not the man you were before tragedy, not the broken man I found 3 years ago, but the man you've become. The man who turned pain into purpose. I love you, Cole replied, kissing her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. My savior, my partner, my future. As they stood there overlooking the city, two people who'd found each other in the darkest circumstances imaginable, Sienna thought about the journey that had brought them here. The screaming, desperate sprint to stop that train. The investigation that nearly got her killed. The moment Cole came back from the dead to save her. The trial, the healing, the slow rebuilding of two shattered lives into something stronger than before. Ready to go home? Cole asked. Ready, Sienna agreed, taking his hand. Home was Brennan Ranch now, for both of them. The place where tragedy had struck, but refused to have the final word. Where wildflowers grew over railway tracks, where horses ran free, where love had bloomed unexpected and fierce and true. They drove through the Texas night, the highway stretching before them like a promise. In 2 weeks, they'd stand in the memorial garden and pledge their lives to each other. In 2 weeks, Sienna would become Sienna Brennan, binding her life to Cole's permanently. But really, she thought as Cole's hand found hers on the center console, they'd been bound together since the moment she'd screamed for him to stop that train. Since the moment she'd refused to let injustice win. Since the moment two broken people decided that healing was worth the risk. "Thank you," Cole said quietly as they turned onto the ranch road. "For what?" "For not giving up. On the investigation. On justice. On me. For seeing the man I could be again when I'd forgotten myself." Sienna raised their joined hands to her lips, kissing his knuckles gently. "Thank you for coming back to life. For choosing hope over despair. For building something beautiful from something terrible." The ranch house appeared in the distance, its windows glowing warmly in welcome. As they pulled into the drive, Sienna looked toward the memorial garden where Rebecca and Dylan's names were etched in stone, surrounded by flowers that bloomed year-round. "We did good by them," she said. "We did," Cole agreed. "And we'll keep doing good. For them, for us, for everyone who needs justice and hope." They walked into their home hand in hand, two survivors who'd found not just justice but love, not just revenge but redemption, not just an ending but a beautiful new beginning. The past would always be part of them. The tragedy, the pain, the 3 years of searching for truth. But the future stretched out bright and full of promise, built on a foundation of love, resilience, and the unshakable belief that even in the darkest times, hope can survive. And sometimes, just sometimes, love survives too.